Season 6 of the Overwatch League has kicked off, and with upsets and shocks already on the scorecard, the Overwatch League title is looking as open as it's ever been. So while we wait for the storylines, the rivalries, and the drama to develop, we thought we'd take a little look back into the Overwatch League history books and rank every single one of the Overwatch League's grand final matches. Not an easy task, as always. The Overwatch League has gained something of a reputation for what some might call lacklustre grand finals, so we'll be judging them on a lot more than just the score, from the quality of the players to the drama of which teams made it. This is every crescendo of the Overwatch League seasons past, ranked. Number 5. 2021 Shanghai Dragons vs Atlanta Reign. Yeah, alright, so remember when I said the league has a rep for bland grand finals? Well, nothing really encapsulates that more than the Shanghai Dragons 4-0 sweep against the Atlanta Reign back in 2021. Narratively, this final was pretty much a non-event. Shanghai were by and large the favourite to win it all since the second half of the regular season, so it was really no surprise to see them completely decimate teams, including a 3-0 sweep of San Francisco Shock, and completely run through the upper bracket. What was a little more interesting and impressive was the Atlanta Reign's demon run through the lower bracket, dropping in the first round to Chengdu Hunters before absolutely feasting on fan favourites like the LA Gladiators, San Francisco Shock, and Dallas Fuel throughout the rest of the playoffs. Ultimately though, all of those upsets led to nothing, but the Reign in a final match against a behemoth they had zero chance and seemingly zero interest in defeating. No one was beating Shanghai this season, and by map 4, it looked like the Atlanta Reign themselves knew how impossible of a task lay ahead of them. In the end, it felt like the final was a formality rather than a fight. For so many big name teams to fall to Atlanta in the lead up to the final, only to have the Reign have no chance against the Dragons in the series, was honestly pretty disappointing for fans. Unless you're a Dragons fan, obviously. There was no resounding cheer at the final map's conclusion, no explosion of relief. The match was already won. It didn't take the shine off Shanghai's historical turnaround in 2021, but a barnstorming season ender, it was not. Number 4. 2018 London Spitfire vs Philadelphia Fusion. In 4th spot comes the first, the inaugural season grand final that saw the London Spitfire arrive in Brooklyn to thank everyone for attending their coronation ceremony, and then proceeded to violently beat up the Philadelphia Fusion on national television. The Spitfire quickly became the first Overwatch League champions in a dominant 2-0 sweep in 2 separate 3-1 and 3-0 series. What should have been a scrappy, desperate fight between two narratively distinct underdogs turned into an embarrassing schoolyard beatdown between a team of Overwatch juggernauts and a team who seemed like they hadn't just played 40 matches of the game in the last couple of months. It really was never in doubt for London. Now don't get us wrong, the series did have its moments, which is why it's not last on the list. Day 1's Volskaya Industries map saw Profit score his infamous 5k to secure the win, and Poco pulled off an iconic and classic Poco Bomb to keep the Fusion in the game as it was slowly and inevitably getting away from them. But outside of that, this series was messy, sloppy, and fairly head-scratching for Fusion fans. The entire thing turned into a historic, but no less hot, mess. Overall, the Fusion crumbled under the pressure and might of London's ability to land more shots than they could, and ultimately weren't capable of bringing a satisfying conclusion, narratively or competitively, to what should have been an explosive finish to the first season of the Overwatch League. Number 3. 2019 San Francisco Shock vs Vancouver Titans. Okay, so this one might be a tad controversial because for a lot of fans, San Francisco's 4-0 sweep of Vancouver Titans in the 2019 finals ranked as one of the biggest letdowns of the year. After all this build-up for a rivalry that had beaten the odds and lasted the entire season, to end on such a quick and uneventful finale was rough for a lot of fans, commentators, and players. Put simply, it didn't live up to the hype. It wasn't a great match to watch, and if you were in the Wells Fargo Centre that day, you were at least glad the traffic wasn't going to be too bad heading home. But crucially, 2019 avoids the pitfalls of other finals behind it in this list, and stands out significantly purely because of its narrative strength. Fact is, however it shook out, this was the final that everyone wanted, and it arrived through a truly entertaining turn of events. The biggest being, of course, the Shock's eternally perfect lower bracket run. To drop in the first round and run it back 20-0 was absolutely earth-shattering. A disgusting display of composed Overwatch play in the highest of high-pressure environments. It is a playoff run that transcends Overwatch and will stand the test of time as one of the greatest team performances in any esport. The final being the capstone of that ridiculous run, a complete dismantling of their biggest season rivals who had themselves made it through an upper bracket gauntlet of high quality and incredible to watch Overwatch. It makes the Shock's victory here cosmically impressive, beyond just a simple clean sweep. And second, you do have to give some credit to the Vancouver Titans in the grand final because they fought hard to try and gain any footing in this series. There were a few maps where the Titans were just one fight away or one costly mistake away from claiming a map as their own, but the Shock were just playing on another level, and sometimes in sports, esports, and life, you just have to accept that on the day, the other guys were better than you. Throughout the whole season, the Titans had relied on their history and chemistry as a team to outplay their opponents even when the individual matchups weren't in their favour, but in the 2019 Grand Final, the Shock did everything better than them, no matter what they tried. Toss in a famous Chandelier Bastion and a historic Sigma performance from Choi Hyo-bin, and you have the makings of a quality series. But ultimately, this final crumbled under the weight of its own narrative hype. Number 2. 2020 San Francisco Shock versus Seoul Dynasty. Now we're getting to the business end. 2020 had what a lot of Overwatch League Grand Finals, it turns out, lack: a competitive match. The 2020 Season 3 final saw the San Francisco Shock clinch their second Overwatch League championship over the Seoul Dynasty in a 4-2 series. Equally forgettable and also ironically memorable because it was online without a crowd to bring the hype and noise thanks to the pandemic ending any and all chance of a public LAN. But had this been played in an arena, it would have been remembered as an all-time fan favourite matchup. It's honestly impressive the Dynasty were able to keep tempo against the Shock in the series. Looking at that roster, the 2020 Shock could be considered to be the greatest lineup ever assembled. So for Dynasty to take maps off of that roster and still fight strong in a series against it is immensely impressive. The meta allowed for some dominant hit scan performances and once-in-a-lifetime Roadhog locks to honestly just allow for the type of aggressive and confident playstyles that you want to see in Overwatch. And when you know it, we got an entertaining and narratively satisfying grand final that year. It was a final to remember at the end of a season to remember, for better or worse. Both teams played their hearts out to send off the lockdown season with a banger instead of a whimper. Number 1. 2022 Dallas Fuel versus San Francisco Shock. I mean, really, it should have been obvious which final was going to come out on top here, shouldn't it? Recency bias be damned, Dallas Fuel versus San Francisco Shock in 2022 was the best Overwatch League final we have ever had, and it's not even close. Not that you would have been able to necessarily predict that at the time. There hadn't been a single 7-map final in any of the previous tournaments of Season 5, or in any of the Overwatch League Grand Finals before that even. And in fact, Dallas had swept the Shock at the Summer Showdown with relative composure, so it was a 50-50 on what kind of game we were actually going to get. Thankfully though, the teams weren't about to let this Grand Final fade into the obscurity of seasons past. Back in an arena filled with cheering fans, Shock and Fuel lit a fire under all previous Overwatch League Grand Finals and showed the world what a true 7-map shootout should look like. Never mind that literally any of the match's maps could have changed hands were it not for a clutch pick here or a slight error of judgment there. Never mind the ridiculous number of individual players from the likes of Proper stealing the show entirely on more than one occasion. Never mind that both teams managed to secure some kind of point or progress on every single map and not a single one ended with a 0 next to any team's name. Except for push maps, obviously, but we're getting to that. Fact is, the 2022 Grand Final came as close to the wire as it's pretty much possible for a game of Overwatch to come. The final push map going to overtime as the Shock managed to steal back the robot, only for a newly respawned Dallas Fuel led by the exceptional Fearless to come out on top in the very last team fight of Season 5 to secure the win and the trophy for Dallas. The screams of a renewed Overwatch League crowd, ridiculous quality of play, and the 7-map shootout we'd been craving. Oh yeah, 2022 was undoubtedly the best Overwatch League final we've ever had. Question now, of course, is whether Season 6 can actually live up to the hype. Let us know your wild theories for which teams are going to make the Grand Finals in 2023 in the comments. And if you agree with our picks, or especially if you don't, let us know why. And if you're still in the mood for some Overwatch League content, check out this video on our picks for the top 10 Overwatch League teams of all time.